Welcome to Live DAF, your online DAF Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem, welcome back to today's DAF. Bava Basra, DAF Mem. We are holding on the bottom line of Lamates Amid Beis. Amar Rava, Amar Rav Nachman. Rava quotes Rav Nachman to say that macha, this protest that an owner will issue against the fellow who is currently in possession of his property. Okay, so he's going to declare to the public that in fact this property was robbed from him. Okay, so this has to be done b'fnei shnayim. You need just two people present during the macha. You don't need a crowd of 3 people. 2 people is enough. Eventually, the information will filter over to the possessor, to the machzik, put him on notice to hold on to his documentation. Macha b'fnei shnayim, you just need 2, and they'll serve as witnesses that in fact you made the macha. Furthermore, there's no need for you to tell the Eidim, please go ahead and record this macha in writing. I want you to document it for me. They can just do that on their own. Why? Rashbam says it's to his benefit. It's a zechus to have this information documented. Mistama nichale, says the Rashbam. So there's no need to specifically instruct them to do so. They can just go ahead and write it down. So that's one halacha. What about a moidah? Moidah, explains the Rashbam, involves the following circumstance. Basically, a fellow he knows he's going to be forced, he's going to be coerced into selling his property or giving away his property. He wants to avoid that. He wants to prevent that from happening. So he issues a moidah, a declaration, a disclaimer in advance of this coercive process. And he tells the Eidim, you should know, by the way, I'm about to encounter a coercive process, and I don't want to be entrapped, and therefore I'm telling you in advance. This is a disclaimer. I'm telling you in advance that whatever I do tomorrow in terms of selling, etc., is just a farce. It's not real. It's not legal. It has no validity. So that's called a moidah. In fact, the Rashbam brings, that's why we have the halacha that we do a bitul moidah. When we sit down to write a shtar, mechira, or matana, we instruct the parties to make a bitul moidah, to get up and say, look, any disclaimer that I may have issued in advance of this transaction is now going to be null and void. And that works. You can do that. You can undo a moidah. He brings a Gemara in Erchen that it works by get, by any other document as well. So back to the story. Moidah, he's issuing this disclaimer in front of whom? How many people need to be present? You need a whole, bezdin? No. B'fnei shnayim, 2 Eidim are enough. Ve'ein tzarich lehem ksevim, and furthermore, you don't need to tell them to write a shtar moidah, a formal document. They can just do it on their own because, once again, it's to his benefit. It's a zechus to have it down on paper. Rashbam asks, why does the Gemara split these cases? We could have just strung them all together. Macha, moidah, etc. They all take place in front of 2 Eidim, and they can just proceed and put it down. So he says that Rava was quoting Rav Nachman, in different situations. Basically, he heard, a halacha from Rav Nachman, he quoted it, he said it over. Heard the next halacha, he quoted it. It wasn't all learned at once, and that's how the Gemara, organized it as well. Okay, so we have macha, we have moidah. What about hoidah? Hoidah involves a fellow who admitted that he owes his friend money, and it was done in front of 2 Eidim. I admit that I owe you $100. So once again, that takes place b'fnei shnayim. You need 2 Eidim for that to prove that in fact there was a hoidah, and in this case, they can't just go ahead and put it down on paper. They can't make a shtar and give it to the lender as proof of his of his claim, because here it's actually going to be to the detriment of the fellow owing the money to have it documented in a formal document. It's one thing to owe a person money, ba'al peh, milva al peh, that's one thing. Just to owe you money, a verbal loan, okay, I have to repay it, but suppose I decide that I repaid it. I can claim parati. I can say I paid it. Right? You can't disprove me. And likewise, there's a halacha that if it's a milva al peh, if it's a verbal loan, then you can't go ahead and harass the customers, buyers who purchased my property after that loan took place. So it's actually to my advantage to leave it as is, to leave it undocumented, unformalized. So if you wish to have it formally documented, you have to tell them, you have to give them the allowance, you have to authorize them to make a shtar and turn that loan into a shtar, milva b'shtar. Kinyan b'fnei shnayim. Suppose he's buying the property and he does a kinyan, and Rashbam says we're speaking about a kinyan sudar, so instead of actually troubling yourself to go and do the mishicha on the car or the kinyan chazaka on the actual property, they sit over here and they make sort of an exchange. He gives them a handkerchief, and that's a kinyan chalipin. In exchange for that, he gives them the property. So it's a quick 1, 2, 3 acquisition. How many need to be present? B'fnei shnayim. You need to aid them to witness that deal, to be aid them. Once again, he doesn't have to authorize them. They can just go ahead and write it in a shtar, and now it's a properly documented transaction. And finally, v'vikim shtaris b'shleisha. Rashbam explains. A fellow has a shtar, any shtar, that he owes me money, okay? Now he's concerned that perhaps the witnesses who signed the document might disappear one day, and the fellow might challenge the validity of the shtar. He might challenge the authenticity of the shtar. It's forged, etc. So how do you get around that? You certify the shtar. How do you certify the shtar? You go into the bezdin and you bring those same edim who will testify that in fact these are our signatures, and the bezdin will accept that testimony and certify the shtar. They'll add a clause on the bottom saying that, us 3 dayanim were present when the edim came and verified, they confirmed their signatures, and we are going to sign this certification. The shtar is now a shtar mekuyam. It's like a psak bezdin. So for this you need 3 edim, 3 dayanim. B'shleisha. Why? Says the Rashbam, because otherwise it'll be like a peculiar situation. You have 2 edim signing that the other 2 edim certified their signatures. It's like eid. It's like one aid testifying based on what the other aid told him. You can't do that. A witness cannot present second-hand testimony, right? Therefore, says the Rashbam, we need 3 people present, like a bezdin, who will now sort of receive this information from the edim who are the signees on the shtar, and the bezdin will now sort of process this information and confirm that in fact the shtar is legitimate and authentic, and certify the shtar accordingly. Vikim shtaris b'shleisha. So this is all Rava quoting Rav Nachman. Continues the Gemara. Amar Rava. Says Rava Ikashili, if there's anything to ask on this list of halachis, Hakashili, the question would be as follows. On one specific instance, the case of the kinyan, Hai kinyan hechidami. So we speak about a kinyan taking place in the presence of 2 edim, and this allows them to just proceed and document it. Hai kinyan hechidami, how do we treat this act of kinyan? Ika masa bezdin dami. Do we treat it like a formal act of a bezdin? Now, why would you consider a kinyan as a legal procedure of bezdin? Says the Rashbam, because just like bezdin has the ability to transfer property, to extract mamain from Reuven and give it to Shimon, right? That's the koyach of bezdin. That's exactly what's happening in a kinyan as well. The item, the property is being transferred from one party to the other. So perhaps we perceive it as a legal process. If that's the case, then you need a bezdin present. You need 3 parties, 3 dayanim, 3 judges. 2 wouldn't be enough. On the other end, if we don't treat an acquisition, a kinyan, like a masa bezdin, which would explain why all you require is two people present. If that's the case, so then the question is, how could the two Eidim just on their own write a shtar without specific authorization? Right? If they're a bezdin, okay, if bezdin takes charge, they record, the minutes, the transcripts. It's up to them. They're in the driver's seat. But if it's not a maaseh bezdin, as per the fact that you only need two people there, so then how can they just go write in a shtar without permission? After he asked the question, he responded, truly, it's not a maaseh bezdin, it's just a plain kinyan. So why do you really not have to tell them to write it? Why could they just do it on their own? Mishum the stam kinyan, we assume that a kinyan of this manner, Rashbam explains, he did a quick kinyan chalipin with a sudar, as we explained, without bothering to go ahead and take physical possession of the item or the property. So apparently the seller was just trying to be, he was trying to be generous and do it efficiently and quickly. Stam kinyan l'ksiva aymed, and of course he would very much want the recipient to have it documented and formalized. So in this case, we don't have to consult with him. Rather, the Eidim turn around and just document it on behalf of the recipient. Okay, so let's summarize this piece of the Gemara. Rava quotes Rav Nachman as follows: a macha'a is done in front of two people, Eidim. You don't have to instruct them to write it, to formulate it, to document it. They can just do it on their own. It's a zechus on my behalf. What about a meidah, a disclaimer in advance of a coerced transaction? Again, that's done in front of two Eidim. Ein tzarich leimak seifu. Haidah, an admission of guilt in front of two Eidim. In this case, you have to consult with the meidah if he's willing to have it documented. A kinyan is done in front of two. You don't have to give them instructions. They can just formulate it, as we explained. And akim shtaris, this is the only item that needs three people as a bezdin. And of course, they don't need to consult with the parties. They just go ahead and formulate this certification and sign it. Continues the Gemara. On the topic of Maidah, Rabba and Rav Yosef, they both said, Damri Tabayu, like Asfina Maidah, the only time we actually issued a Maidah document, that disclaimer document, in advance of a supposedly coerced transaction, Ella Amandalei Tzayestina. We only do it on against a fellow who's known to be an uncooperative person. That would explain why he feels threatened by this person, he feels intimidated by him, and therefore he resorts to this maidah process to save himself. But otherwise, if he's a regular person, why are you resorting to a maidah? Just call him to court. If he's blackmailing you in any way, so we don't go ahead and write a maidah because it sounds funny, it sounds fishy. Why are you? It sounds like you're just making it up. Abaye and Rava, they disagree. They both say, Afilu olai v'alecha, even on me, on you, on regular people, on tzaddikim. You never know, maybe the bezdin is not available. It's not a timely situation, and therefore, he has no choice but to write a maidah, lest he be pushed into a coerced situation. Amr Nahardoi. Nahardoi add as follows, on the topic of maidah. Kol maidah deloik sibbe. The maidah is only valid if it contains the following content. So a meidah which does not have the following, Ananya Dinabay, where the Eidim testify firsthand that we are fully apprised of a situation. We know exactly what's going on. We're familiar with the circumstance, with the Einis. Ananya Dinabay the planya. We know exactly what's happening. He's being pushed, he's being blackmailed. So unless it has that detail included in the meidah, it's worthless. Lav meidahi. Meaning they can't just, put down, well, he asked us to write the maidah because he says he's being forced. That doesn't work. Asks the Gemara, maidah demai. Let's just break this down. This maidah, this disclaimer, what's it coming to oppose? In advance of what type of transaction are we speaking of? Either gita udmatanta, if it's a get or a gift that he's about to give. So why is this element important? Why is this required? Gilui milsa ba'amahi. As long as we see it that he's being forced, that gives him credibility. That substantiates this whole moidah. Why? Rashbam explains, look, he has no reason to give a get or matana if he doesn't really want to do it. So if he doesn't want to do it, he shouldn't be giving the get and matana. Right? So apparently the reason why he's giving it is because he's being forced. Okay, so that explains why he's doing it this way. He's being forced, and he's compelled to make a moidah, a disclaimer in advance of that procedure. Right? He's not getting paid to give the get, to give the matana. So if he wants to do it, let him do it without the moidah. Why is he playing games? Apparently, he doesn't really want to do it, so don't give it. Apparently, he's being forced. So that explains why he's doing the moidah. So you don't need more than that. Why do we need the Edom to be familiar with the circumstance? As long as they see that he's doing it unwillingly, that he's asking them for a moidah, that should be sufficient. Okay, so let's say he's doing a moidah against a sale, in anticipation of a future sale that he's about to execute. And here, maybe he really doesn't want to sell the item. He's a short money, so he's desperate for funds. Nobody wants to sell their property, so he's desperate for money. That's why he's being forced, so to speak, to sell it. He's not really forced. It's just, he's just compelled to do it due to his circumstances. So since deep down he really doesn't want to do it, he regrets the fact that he has to go and sell the item. So he's playing games. He's cutting corners. He's trying to preempt that sale by issuing the moidah in advance, so that later on he can get his item back. So in this case, it makes very much sense that the Edom should not cooperate unless they know for sure that he's being blackmailed, that he's being coerced. Otherwise, it's an endless proposition. Says the Gemara, really? Rava says, we never issue a moidah in advance of a sale. Why? Rashbam goes into whole arichos. He says, based on the Gemara later in DAF Memches, that basically, if it depends how he was forced. If a person was forced to sell, they told him, sell us any property, one of your properties. So in this case, and he went ahead and he chose a specific property and he sold it to him, that's not called an einus because he, made that decision. If it's a specific coercion, sell us this property. So in this case, it doesn't work because he's forced. So all he needs to do is bring Edom that he was forced and he's done. He doesn't have to make the shtar moidah. Right? So, the Edom will testify that he was forced. Maybe they can put it down on paper, but it's not really called a shtar moidah. So that explains what Rava meant, that we don't do a moidah on a sale. So then it's not relevant to our discussion. Says the Gemara, no, we are speaking about a moidah in advance of a sale, but a very specific type of case. And that will explain why we do it and why we require the Edom to be familiar firsthand with the circumstances surrounding this forced sale. Even Rava would agree, Hecha de Anis, in the case where he's being forced to do so, Ukamasa de Pardisa. Like that very specific case of the Pardisa. What was the story there? Pardisa is a vineyard. There was a fellow, the Mashkin Pardis L'Chavri. He had a vineyard and he gave it to his friend as a Mashkin. Lashnin for 3 years. So his friend lent him money, right? Shimon lent Reuven money. Reuven gave his property to Shimon for the time being. Keeps it for a couple of years. Consumes the crops, and that sort of gets applied, considered as repayment for the loan. So the thing is that he was there for a couple of years, 3 years, Lashnin, and Shimon, he took a liking to the property. He put a lot of hard work in there, and he became very personally attached to the property and decided he wants to buy it from Reuven. Reuven wasn't buying, wasn't selling. So Shimon resorted to blackmailing tactics to try to get this property from Reuven, to try to get Reuven to sell it to him. After Shimon sat there for 3 years, 3 years is Shnei Chazaka. Theoretically, he can use that as proof of ownership, if he chooses to do so. So, in fact, he did so. He used it to blackmail Reuven. Omar, he tells Reuven, look, I'd like to buy this property. I know you're not really willing to sell it to me, but I'm going to force you. Imazbinously. If you sell it to me, I'll pay you for it. If you sell it to me, mutter, then great. We both walk away happy. But otherwise, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to conceal the fact that I have it as a mashkin. I'm going to take that shtar, that document that we both issued during the, when during the mashkin was arranged. When the mashkin was arranged, I'm going to hide it. I'm going to conceal it, as if it doesn't exist. And I'll claim that it's my field. I purchased it from you. I'm here for 3 years. Chazaka, it's fully mine. L'kuchi biyadi. So here, Reuven is being forced into a sale, which he doesn't want to do. And it's clearly a blackmail situation. Right? So here, we certainly have to go and write him a meidah. Otherwise, he'll lose the entire property. He's about to lose it. It's not like, he's being forced, he can resist. If he resists, then the other fellow will just pretend that nothing happened, that it was his all along. That's it. So in this case, Kai Gavna, certainly over here, Kasvina Meidah, we go ahead and write him a Meidah. Now the Rashbam brings the Rabbeinu Hananel, who goes through the whole story step by step, explaining exactly what was proposed and how the Edom were involved and how they found out. So he says like this. Basically the question is, how did the Edom know that this is true? I mean, Reuven is claiming that Shimon is forcing him and blackmailing. How did the Edom know? Right? Because that's what Nardoya is saying, that the Edom, in this case, have to actually stipulate that we are first, fully aware or fully involved in this circumstance. We know the details of this story. How do they know? This is all being done behind closed doors, right? He's threatening him behind closed doors. He said like this. He did an FBI sting on him. Listen to this. Shimon approaches Reuven. First Reuven tells the Edom, look, I'm being confronted by Shimon. He's threatening me. Let's try to set him up. Okay? And I'm going to set him up in front of you. And he finds a moment where he can actually approach Shimon in front of the Edom, in a public area. And he says to Shimon, what's going on with the field? So Shimon says, what are you talking about? You sold it to me. It's my field. Okay? So he completely denies. This he's doing in public in front of the Edom. So the Edom have now heard Shimon's denial. Then Reuven, finds a quiet moment where he approaches Shimon quietly. He says, Shimon, let's go. What's going on? Let's work this out. So Shimon says, sure, of course, no problem. We can work it out. I'll buy it from you, and we're done. So Reuven says, okay, I'll sell it to you. Shimon says, okay. Could you please prepare a document, a sale document, which you can do, without me. Go to the Sefer and put together a shtar mechira. Reuven goes back to the Edom and updates them. Look, remember Shimon totally denied, and now he's asking me to sell it to him. You see what's going on? He's playing games. So now I'm about to write a shtar mechira for him, so that at least he pays me for the field. But I want you to know, this is all being done forced. I want to make a shtar meidah in advance of the shtar mechira. So now they're fully familiar with the story because they were there. They saw Shimon denying. They saw Shimon claiming that it was his. So now they're fully informed, firsthand informed about what's happening, and this enables them to issue a shtar meidah with all the details. They'll issue a shtar meidah to Reuven saying, look, we are fully aware of the circumstances. We know this is a blackmail situation, and empower Reuven to retrieve his property later on. So that's the case that we're speaking of. Amar Rabbi Yehuda, hai matanta tmirta. A matana, which was issued clandestinely. as we're going to see in a minute. It doesn't work. You can't collect with this gift document. It's worthless. Because the fact that it's being done in a hidden way puts its validity into question. Perhaps he already gave this property to somebody else, or perhaps he's trying to use this clandestinely issued document as a maidah for a future transaction. Bottom line is, we can't treat this as a valid document. How do you define a hidden matana? He told the Edom, go and hide, and then issue the document. Do it quietly. There's another version. Matana Tmirta is defined as follows. He failed to instruct the Edom to go sit out in the street, in the open, and write it for him over there. So according to the first version, he told them to hide. Second version, he did not tell them to do it publicly. But he didn't tell them to hide. Might be any difference between the two versions? Yeah, he could be now stumble. Let's say he didn't say anything. He didn't say hide, he didn't say publicize. According to version 1, it's okay. According to version 2, he must tell them to publicize. And that's the halacha l'maisa. We paskin that the Edom should be writing in the shtar. We were told to publicize it. Okay. Amar Rava, although a matana tmirta is not a valid matana, v'havya moidah l'chaverta, but it could be applied as a moidah, as a disclaimer document for any future transactions. So the fact that he wrote a shtar matana in this fashion indicates to us that he was trying to preempt any further transactions on this property. He knew that he's going to be forced into doing something later. So instead of doing that, formal maidah process, he decided to go the easy way. He just asked Aiden, you know what? Draft a shtar matana as if I gave away this property to Reuven, but do it quietly. Don't make a ruckus about it. I don't want people to know about it. This way, later on, he'll be forced. He knows he's expecting somebody to force him to, a shimon to force the matana. So he'll be able to just pull out this shtar matana, which preceded that shtar matana, use it as a maidah to invalidate that second transaction. That's Rava's chiddush. Omar Rav Papa. This is not so simple. Other Rava, this halacha that we have just quoted in the name of Rava, that a shtar matanta tmirta is considered a maidah which undoes any future transactions on this same item or property. La beferish itma wasn't really stated clearly. Rava did not teach it to us clearly. Ela mechlal itma was derived from a story involving Rava, but really it's erroneous. It's an erroneous conclusion, erroneous interpretation of Rava's opinion. What was the story? Dahu Gavra. There was a certain fellow, the Azal, the Dusha Itisa. He approached a woman to be Mekadosh her. Amrullah, she tells him, look, I know you're a wealthy man. Share some of your wealth. If you grant me all your properties, I'll marry you. Otherwise, I'm not going to marry you. So she was sort of blackmailing him, right? So he went ahead and he issued a document giving her all his properties. Suddenly, this fellow's older son shows up and he says, what's going on? He gave it all away? To her? What happened to me? What am I going to get? Amalei, Vahu Gavran, this man, myself. Ma Tavele, what's going to be with him? Ma Tavele. Amalus Lasadi. So actually, Rashbam points out that this took place before. He gave it all to the future wife. The son got wind of this transaction that's about to take place, and he quickly preempted it, approached his father, and the father says, you know what? Amalul Sadis, he told the father told Adam, Zila Tmur Be'Evri Yamina, go hide in this place called Evri Yamina, V'kasfulei, and give it all away to my son. So this is a classic Matanta Tmirta, right? And then he went ahead and he double dipped. He gave the same properties to the Isha as well. So the son came first and then the Isha. Oh, so they approached Rava to paskin the case. Who's the rightful owner? Amar Luz, he says, nobody. Loi markana, v'loi markana. Not him, not her. Nobody's kain. Now, the observer figures, Mishum, the reason why the son doesn't get it, because it's a clandestine matana, it's a matanta tmirta, it doesn't work. Likewise, the Isha doesn't get, because the matanta tmirta of the son preempts the Isha's transaction. It's like a moidah. Apparently, Rabbi holds that although matanta tmirta is not really a proper matana, but it can serve to preempt any further documents. V'lohi. But the Gemara responds by saying it's incorrect. It's incorrect. A matanta tmirta can't necessarily be applied as a matana for future transactions. Rather, that case was different. Hasam muchacha milsa. There it was clearly evident the machmas einso dukas of law that he was forced to give her his assets, right? Because she wouldn't marry him otherwise. So there we say that the shtar to the son was like a moidah to prevent the transaction that followed. But over here, in a regular case, where he doesn't have a clear and evident oines situation in the second matana, right? So let's say he gave matanta tmirta to Reuven, then he went in and he gave it all to Shimon, but he wasn't forced to do so. There was no oines, no apparent oines. So here we say, look, avalacha mar nichle de likni. He wants Mar, the second fellow, to be kaina. Umar the nichle nikli, the first person, doesn't want to be kaina. Otherwise, he would have given him a regular matana, not a matanta tmirta. So the first document, which isn't the properly written document, doesn't work. But the second one does. Now back to the idea of matanta tmirta. We have two versions, two ways to define the matanta tmirta. Version 1 was go hide. Version 2 was don't publicize. What about nor this nor that? He didn't say anything. So what's the halacha by stama? Ravina Omar Chashina, we're not concerned about it. It's not called matanta tmirta, it's kosher. Rav Ashi Omar Chashina, we are concerned. We shouldn't be doing it. That's the halacha. The Rashbam says the reason why Rav Ashi used the word chashina, he didn't say it's possible. He said chashina, we're not certain that it works. So Chatchil, you meant to actually include in the shtar. He instructed us to do it publicly. But otherwise, we just leave things as is, meaning that you can't really collect on this document, but if you took the property already, we can't take it back from you. We just leave it as is. Okay, so let's summarize the halacha of moidah. On whom do we issue a moidah? What about a person who's a tzayistin? He's known to be a cooperative fellow. Say Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef, you can't make a moidah on him because just invite him to the bezdin and deal with him there. Abai and Rabbi say you do, you never know. All kinds of circumstances that justify a moidah. What about a moidah ahead of a sale? Rabbi says you don't do that. What about on get the matana? Of course you do. What about Amasa de Pardisa? Of course you do, and Rish Lakish adds that in this case, the Eidim must be informed. They must state in the Moidah that they were informed, they were familiar with the circumstances involved. A Matana Tmirta, which according to the first Lashon of Yosef is a clandestine Matana that he told him to hide. According to the second Lashon, he didn't tell him to publicize. That's not considered a Matana. Can it be applied as a Moidah for any future deals? The Gemara concludes, according to Rapapa, that it can be used as a Moidah only, right, provided that that we know there is a Oynes Demuchach on the transaction that followed. Okay, let's just quickly summarize Amud Aleph as well. So we had Rava quoting Rav Nachman regarding Macha, Moidah, Haidah, and Kinyan. All these take place in front of 2. Kiyum Shtar is in front of 3. The rule of thumb is that something which is a schus can just be recorded without consulting the parties involved. Otherwise, we have to consult them. A Kinyan is not a Masa Bezin. The reason why you don't have to consult is because Stam Kinyan, like Siva Omer, it's assumed that is okay with you putting it down in a document. All the best to you and Atzlacha Rabba.